is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Five minutes past 9 on LBC. Welcome to the show if you've just joined us. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10. And what I thought we'd do today is talk about a religious festival, because Britain still is described as a Christian country, and in many ways it is, even if you are not a churchgoer. Most of us, I think, would probably say that we try to live by vaguely Christian standards and morals and ethics. And we all know where Christmas comes from. But how much do we know about other religions' festivals, which to them are as important as Christmas is to Christians? And I would suggest we probably don't know an awful lot. For example, we're all used to people wishing each other Happy Diwali. If I said to you, if I stuck a microphone under your nose and said to you, tell me what Diwali means, I wonder how many people in this country of whatever background would be able to do that. And I think it's a little bit the same with Ramadan, and so I can't even pronounce it, and Eid. And of course today, millions of Muslims are gathering across the UK and indeed, of course, across the world to celebrate the Muslim festival of Eid. It's spelled E-I-D, or it's actually the full name, and Ajmal is still with us. He'll tell me if I get this wrong. It's Eid al-Fitr. Is that right? Fitr.
That's it, perfect.
Fitr, I like that. Now, that means the Festival of Sweets, which is just my kind of festival, even though I'm a diabetic, which shows you why I am a diabetic, I suppose. And it marks the end of Ramadan, which is a month-long period of fasting and prayer for Muslims. So I thought today we'd have a little bit of a teach-in on Ramadan and Eid and what it means to Muslims across the country. And I think it's important that the rest of us who are not Muslims actually understand what it means and why people celebrate it. Because on the face of it, you think, well, it's a bit weird, isn't it, to sort of not have any food or water or drink while the sun is up. So where does this all come from? Why do Muslims celebrate it, and how do they celebrate it? As I say, Ajmal Masroor, we've kept him in the studio under lock and key, basically, so we didn't have to hire anyone else to come and talk about this. But he's an Imam. He knows all about the roots of Ramadan and Eid. So, Ajmal, over to you.
Thank you very much. Just to begin, fasting is not a Muslim practice, by the way. You find the Jewish communities fast. There is a very nice story of Prophet Zachariah and his son, John the Baptist. Zachariah was very old and he did not have any children. And God said to him, Zachariah, now you go home and tell your wife that you two both should stay silent for 3 days. And then you will conceive. And silent and fast. And that became a very well-known tradition within the Jewish communities to fast. Even before fasting, within the Jewish communities were very normal. Christian communities, fasting is normal. Hindus fast. Buddhist communities, they fast very much throughout the year. So the verse of the Quran that talks about fasting, it says, God has prescribed fasting for you just as he had done to people before you. So Muslims can't claim that this is exclusively theirs. Fasting has a number of elements. So you don't eat and drink or have your sexual desires fulfilled during the hours of fasting. So early morning until sunset. And then at night you can, but you should eat moderately at night and not eat too much. Overindulgence would cause you trouble. Would you believe, Iain, I've lost 10 kilos in this month of Ramadan alone. And that was a deliberate attempt to lose the weight that I had gained over the year. So it got a lot of physical, emotional and spiritual benefit. The purpose of fasting is to enhance your conscience. You become more conscious of presence of God in your life. You become more conscious of the benefits of food, drinks. You become more conscious of your relationship with people around you. You become more conscious of the way you look, the way you talk, what you hear. And you become conscious of your behavior. It's a holistic spiritual boot camp, I call it, for 30 days. You keep on repeating the same thing every day for 30 days. You become more charitable. So you reduce your food intake.
See, I've become more bad-tempered.
But if you keep on trying it, you will overcome the bad temper. I've seen people do the same. My wife says the same thing. 20 years ago when I got married to her, she said, I can't cope with fasting because she became a Muslim in some stage in life. Now, she loves and or celebrates fasting with us. My children do too, but they're now 18 years old and 15 years old. So it You can regulate your emotion by learning how to, and fasting enables you to. It's a trick. I don't want to call it trigger, but it's a means, it's a tool we use. You know, in the month of fasting, bread smells acutely tasty. Even a toast tastes divine. Anything that's been cooked, you can really smell it. So your senses become very aware. You are also tested so that you can control and regulate your emotions. If somebody triggers you, the Islamic teaching is you turn around and say to them, I'm fasting. It works beautifully at home. Husband and wife arguments, I'm fasting. You don't argue anymore. Don't quarrel. Don't backbite. Don't slander. Don't gossip. These are teachings of fasting. So not only are we being taught to restrain our habits of eating and drinking, well, we're also being taught how to regulate our emotion and enhance our character and our conscience.
That's interesting, because I think most people, they know about the fasting, but they don't know about all the other things that you've just talked about. Are there exemptions, like, for example, for diabetics? I mean, it's not particularly healthy for a diabetic to not eat at all for 12 hours of the day. I mean, are there rules and regulations that that people, certain groups, can have exemptions?
There is the verse which talks about fasting, gives the exemption in the same verse. God says, and if you're traveling and if you're not well, don't fast. And this not well is dependent on your doctor's advice. I, as an Imam, won't give advice to anyone who comes to me with medical problems. I would say, go and talk to your doctor, say you would like to fast, and see what the doctor says. Many of my Muslim friends who are doctors, they would look at the medication. So, for example, in the month of Ramadan, I had to take antibiotics because I had tooth infection. So instead of taking 3 tablets a day, my doctor regulated and gave me a different strength antibiotics that I could take twice a day at night. When I wake up in the morning to have my early morning food to start my fasting, and when I break my fast in the evening. So you could actually speak to your doctor if you're taking medication. But if you're not well enough, don't fast. My mother doesn't fast. She's elderly. But if you don't fast, you have to do charity. So you have to feed a person for each fast. You give them enough money to be able to feed themselves for a whole day. So my mother gave 30 fasts. She missed £300, and we gave it to charity. Many people do the same. A woman who is menstruating, she's exempt from fasting. A pregnant mother, if she's unable to fast and if her baby is going to be in trouble, don't fast. If you're breastfeeding, the same thing. If you're traveling, it could be inconvenient for you to fast. You're given exemption from fasting, and you make it up whenever you're able to later on. So you're absolutely right. It's common sense approach. You fast if you're in a stable, healthy and happy condition, but if you're in a situation where it will be adversely affecting your physical health or your emotional health, you're given an exemption.
If you hadn't been with us throughout the evening tonight, what would you have been doing?
Well, our day started, and it's interesting. Eid al-Fitr, the Arabic word, is actually celebration of breakfasts, food, like you said, sweets. So early morning I woke up. The first thing I did was I haven't had a fry-up for the whole month of Ramadan. So that's what I did first thing in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. That's how bad it was.
5 o'clock.
I know. I had to go to the mosque. So I came back after the mosque. Everyone was asleep. I had that. My kids woke up to the smell. They ate that too, went to the mosque. And in the mosque we prayed. And did you know, Iain, you can't pray the fasting, the Eid prayer in the morning unless you have done an act of charity. And that is, you've got to pay a fixed fee to the poor and the needy who may not be able to celebrate Eid like you because of financial constraint or difficulties. So I pay well before £10 a person. In my family, 4 persons, £40. In our mosque, we've collected well over £10,000 from our congregation. And we've given that to many people around the world who otherwise would be very unable to fast, unable to celebrate the Eid. So we then come to the mosque and pray. 3,000 people came to our mosque in Southgate today, over 2 congregations. It was unbelievable, buzzing with food, sweets, with ice cream. Everybody got a free ice cream in our mosque. We had an ice cream van. We had boiled eggs somebody bought to give, 700 of them to give to people. We had cakes, we had baklava, we had Indian sweets, everything going in the morning. After prayers, I came home. My mother came with about 10 dishes of food that she had cooked. My wife had cooked, I had cooked, so we had a massive lunch. Then in the afternoon, before I came here, I was sitting at a friend's house having dessert. And if I wasn't coming here, I'd actually be scoffing down an amazing meal.
So all that 10 kilograms that you've lost, you'd have basically put back in one day?
I wouldn't, because I would be eating in moderation. I would taste small bits from everything. I would not deprive myself of the great pleasures of food. But the teaching of Ramadan is to learn to restrain yourself. Rather than become gluttonous or eat excessively or become obese, I need to learn to regulate my desires and eat in moderation.
Now, I've got a couple of questions here for you. One from Gordon in Hampstead. I'm not sure whether he's got his tongue in his cheek or not on this one, but can you ask if it's really true that a lot of Muslims break their fast at Ramadan with Vimto? It seems such an unlikely choice.
I have no idea. It depends on people's culture. There are different people who break their fast differently, but universally we have a date, the Middle Eastern amazing superfood, and that is a very well-known tradition of the Prophet. It comes from his own life and practice. And it's also nutritious. So I have a date and a glass of milk or a glass of water. Some people make milk drink, make it with colour. Some people have fizzy drinks. People have whatever they want. I don't think Vimto is the top.
Well, according to, now where's this from? This is from The Independent, so it must be true.
Tell me.
They say the maker of Vimto is celebrating record sales in the Middle East after building on its success as the drink of choice for those observing Ramadan. It was the 100th year that the UK soft drink has been available during Ramadan since it was expanded to global markets, including India a century ago. The company says it sells 25 million units of Vimto cordial during the Muslim holy month. Well, there, you've learned something as well.
I've learned something amazing. Well, but Vimto must be doing something good. It's nothing to do with the religious nature of the fasting. It's probably to do with people's personal taste and choices, and, of course, good marketing.
Yeah, I suspect that's what this story is all about, to be honest, but interesting one. Brian says, how do Muslims who live very far up north in the Northern Hemisphere manage? For some times of the year, there isn't actually a night.
They actually observe a closest country with reasonable time, for example. So a lot of countries like Sweden, Norway, Finland and Iceland would follow. A country closest to Europe would be Morocco, or maybe even Spain. There is a saying of the Prophet, if you are in such a hemisphere, then you follow the reasonable, most closest country to your country with a reasonable time frame. In the UK, of course, we are quite reasonable, but in the summer it can be very long. I remember when I was younger, it was very long. We would start our fasting at about 2 in the morning and we'd break at 10. That's a long period. So when it is extreme in terms of time, that's not what God wants.
Because Ramadan is a bit like Easter, isn't it? It's not the same. It's not the same weekend, not the same month every year.
It follows the lunar calendar, and lunar calendar is 10 days shorter to the solar calendar, so it goes back. So now it's going shorter and shorter and shorter, which is brilliant, really. We'd start fasting at 6 o'clock and break at 4 o'clock. But that celebration doesn't last that long because very soon it will go to summer. But if it's extreme, you follow the nearest reasonable country, and that's within our scripture.
What did you make of the argument that we covered a couple of weeks ago about the Ramadan lights in Regent Street, which for some reason some people thought wasn't appropriate because it was at the same time as Easter, to which my response was, well, we don't do Easter lights, really, and there's nothing stopping anyone if they want to. What did you make of all of that?
Nothing, really. Many Muslim countries light up their entire country in the month of Ramadan, and if we do that in London, why not? I think we should celebrate it. Lighting up, celebrating, coming together, it's a good thing. Bring out the festivities in people, bring out fun. Fasting is hard. And so encouraging Muslims, if you're not a Muslim, is a brilliant thing to do. My neighbours are very sympathetic. They often talk to me saying, how is the fasting going? When is it going to be over? Especially my local newsagent. He always tells me, come on, man, when is it over? How many days to go? It seems like he's more worried about when the fasting is going to end. Maybe it's affecting his business. I'm not sure. But it's certainly a good thing that my neighbour is concerned. So put more lights, more decorations, and say to your neighbours and on your streets, hey guys, Muslims are fasting, let's show some sympathy.
Now, I just saw a text here which I wanted to read out, and I'm trying to find it. Here it is. This is from Tony in Bedford, who says, your speaker fails to mention the stomach pains you get from not eating, which is the pain people experience in third world countries where food is scarce. I'm Christian, but I will fast with my Muslim friends. It's a real eye-opener when the hunger pain locks in. Many starving people have this pain all the time. Ramadan is a beautiful practice for everyone to practice.
I agree with him entirely. You get to learn the pain of people who are disadvantaged in life, those who have not eaten for days, those who are starving in many parts of the world, while you and I eat a lot of food and maybe we even are wasteful. So Ramadan makes that connection possible. Even thirst makes it makes you realize what thirst really means. Can you imagine living in a country where there is no clean water? Can you imagine living in a country where there is no food available for you? And we are very privileged to have it every day. And to not eat when you have it is actually you stand in solidarity to the people. And that's why Muslims in this country, Iain, give the biggest amount of charity amongst any other communities. Did you know we give £120 million in charity in 1 month alone, in the month of Ramadan, to the poor and the needy of the world, because we understand their pain. We understand their hunger. We understand their thirst.
Now, I'm getting a lot of people sending in questions, which is a good thing, but I was going to let you go now. But
I'm happy to stay.
Are you happy to stay a little bit longer?
Yeah, as long as you buy me a good meal afterwards, but I'm just joking. It's okay, don't worry, I'm just joking. I've eaten already.
We could have a Burger King on the 10:08 to Tunbridge.
Oh, I'm going to Enfield.
Well, there you go.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
22 minutes past 9, we're talking about Ramadan and Eid, and we're asking, what does Eid mean to you? And if you have any questions about it all, we have Imam Ajmal Masroor with us answering. I mean, it's very interesting, some of the questions that are coming in. We've already covered, I mean, Vimto was not a word I imagined that I'd mentioned during this hour, but that was a really good question. We've got a lot of others here as well, but if you'd like to give us a call and tell us what Eid means to you, or with a question, please do, 0345 6060 973. In fact, let's go to a call. James is in Archway. Hi, James.
Hello, Iain. Nice to speak to you. I want to know, when they have the festival of Eid, do they have any hymns?
Well, hymns are innately Christian, aren't they?
Well, they
are actually.
We have what we call chorus. We sing together, or we chant together. The first thing in the morning when we go to the mosque. Actually, there's a whole printed sheet that we give out to our members, and the one with the best voice would lead the chorus with everybody, and it goes something like Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, wa lillahi alhamd. I don't have the melodious voice, but in different countries the chants are very different, depends on where you go. So for example, I went to Morocco the other day. I loved it, the way it's localized. If you go to Asia, they've got a very different chant, but it's the same chant. So there is a little bit of chanting, but not hymns.
So you don't have an organ?
No musical instruments. It's always vocal.
Right. And they're praying 5 times a day. How long does each praying session last?
10 minutes at best. If you think about it, early morning prayer before sunrise, that's the hardest one for most people, but it really disciplines you. Since I founded this mosque, I usually used to pray at home, but since finding this mosque or establishing this mosque, I go to the mosque. And it's been an amazing thing. So that takes 5-10 minutes. So each prayer, on average, 10 minutes. But in our prayers, we also recite. So there is a recital. And the Imam would recite in the evening prayers melodiously the Quran itself. And the people who are praying behind would listen. And if I'm praying by myself, I would recite the same thing, either silently or loudly. Melody is very common in reciting.
So in a sense, it is a bit the same as a Christian service, where the vicar or priest will sort of, on his, and I suppose nowadays her own, will sing bits from the Bible, or sort of sing psalms or whatever, which the congregation doesn't take part in, apart from occasionally saying Amen. I mean, it sounds a little
very
bit similar.
Yeah. All religion, especially Christianity, Judaism and Islam, share these very prayer concept, fasting concept, and many other similarities. So other religious festivals would have hymns and songs. Muslims would do the same without the musical instruments.
Monjo says, Ramadan is a great time for family and community. This year we gave out iftar, which means just food we break for our fast, to the neighbours, Muslims and non-Muslims, a way to share love and joy with others. And Joe says, I'm not a Muslim, but I've messaged my lovely Muslim friends to wish them Eid Mubarak, as they do me at Christmas and Easter, etc. I'm just so glad that this festival gets mentioned nationally by your show. That's Eid Mubarak. What does Mubarak mean? Because we always think President of Egypt.
Happy.
So
happy Eid.
He was President happy.
Well, supposedly.
He didn't act it like.
No, he didn't, of course. The big-time dictator he was. Eid Mubarak, you can say. Eid Sa'id, may you be happy. The Arabic word Sa'id, Mubarak, they're all interchangeable. And this is so amazing. So in the mosque, for example, when we were in the morning, everyone was hugging and exchanging greetings, shaking hands, and we all say Eid Mubarak to each other. And that verbal recognition that I recognize you, I recognize the fact that you've made an effort, you're here, you're celebrating with me. We did it together, guys. 30 days of a marathon boot camp, spiritual boot camp, you've done it. Well done, let's celebrate it. And that is expressed by the word Eid Mubarak.
You see, if I go to a Christian church service, and it's usually this happens in Catholic services, but I think it's also happening now a lot in Anglican services, where you turn around and shake hands with someone behind you. I find that acutely embarrassing.
Well, we don't do that necessarily as a ritual, but everybody would hug in a mosque.
And I get the symbolism of it, but I just always want to cringe when it happens. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, maybe that's your personal space, right? I mean, we all have our own personal space. I would cringe if somebody wanted to give me a kiss on my cheek. I would say, hey, that's my personal space. But hugging and shaking hands is a very common thing. We do that with people of other faith too, just as human. I think we all, as human beings like warmth, touch. Remember, during the COVID time, people were feeling very lonely because they couldn't touch their loved ones. So this is one way religion encouraging one another to keep that warmth alive.
Interesting what that text said there about sort of wishing people from other religions sort of all the best on their particular special day. There's always this perception, I think, that religions are almost competing with each other and therefore never the twain shall meet. But it's a natural human thing to do. If you have a Muslim neighbour and you know that today is Eid, it's a natural thing to do to wish them, would you say, happy Eid?
Yeah, happy Eid, definitely.
And vice versa with Christmas. But there's always been this perception in this country that somehow Muslims find Christian festivals offensive. And I've never believed it. And, I mean, certainly a lot of Muslim people I know happily celebrate Christmas.
It is part and parcel of our faith to be courteous and cordial to our fellow human beings. And God says in the Quran, don't insult other people's religion or their God or anything they believe in. So it's very important to recognize that. Prophet Muhammad used to give to his Jewish neighbors gifts on special occasions, or Christian neighbors on special occasions, gifts. So to say that Muslims would get offended by Christian or Sikh or a Hindu festival, I think that's really very sad, anyone who says that. We are all human. We like a bit of festival. We like a bit of celebration. Any excuse to have a party, really. Why not share food? Of course, we have our dietary restrictions, and as long as you're aware of it. So my daughter went to a birthday party with her friends, and they live in the countryside and white English family, Christian background. They went out of their way to buy halal meat for her so that she could eat and everybody else could eat. What a nice thing to do. It's part of our human culture to celebrate with one another, to stand with one another. And when we lose that, Iain, we've lost everything.
Yeah, I quite agree. We've got lots more questions coming in. Are you happy to stay a bit longer?
Yes, no problem.
I feel I'm abusing your good nature.
No, you're okay.
I just think it's really important that people who don't know much about Islam, don't know much about any religion maybe, just get that little bit of extra understanding, and that's all I'm trying to do in this hour.
And I'm happy to help.
And as you can imagine, there have been a few naysayers on the text saying, why do this? We're a Christian country and all the rest of it. Well, yeah, we are and have been and still will be a predominantly Christian country, but that doesn't mean to say that it's not a good idea to understand how our neighbours live and what this festival means to them. So that's what we're going to continue doing.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
9:33 on LBC. Imam Ajmal Masroor is here, helping me through this hour, because as you can imagine, I'm not an expert on any religion, actually, let alone Islam. I have a vague understanding of Ramadan and Eid, but I'm not going to put it any more than that. So I wanted to really explore that over the course of this hour and ask, what does Eid mean to you as a Muslim? Lots and lots of texts coming in, really appreciative texts thanking me for doing this hour. There are some texts, as you can imagine, which say exactly the opposite, but I just think, as I said before, I think it's important that as a country we understand about all religions, and given that 4 million people in this country do believe in Islam and follow the Muslim faith, then I think the rest of us need to make a little bit of an effort to understand why. Joe says, could you ask the Imam about the difference between Big Eid and Little Eid in the UK? And is the UK the only country to name Eids like this?
Well, Big Eid and Little Eid actually doesn't exist. Sorry to disappoint our questioner. There is Eid al-Fitr, which is the Eid after Ramadan, 30 days of fasting, you celebrate that. And there is Eid al-Adha, which is the Eid that coincides with pilgrimage. I'm assuming he's considered that to be the bigger one, and this one is the lesser one. Actually, there is no distinction between the two. There are two festivals depicting two different things, and Muslims celebrate them. The second one, Eid al-Adha, coincides with people who have gone to Hajj, pilgrimage. Those of us who couldn't go, we thank God for taking our loved ones to the pilgrimage, and hopefully they will return in one piece, and the fact that they've completed it. And we join in that celebration. And remember, pilgrimage for Muslims is about recognizing Abraham and his journey in Mecca with his son and his family. And everything Abraham did, we replicate that in order to connect with what God had sent in the past, in the previous scripture. So Hajj is actually a universal connecting point for Muslims. And that Eid is a very significant Eid, but it's no less significant or more significant than Eid al-Fitr. Two Eids, two occasions to celebrate.
We can't. I mean, I suppose Easter is the equivalent in Christianity, isn't it? In that you've got two big sort of festivals. I mean, obviously very different, but we can never be satisfied with just one.
No, we want two, and if we've got two, why do we have two? You know, what can you do?
Junior says, can you ask your guest, how do soldiers practice Ramadan in the middle of a mission?
They don't have to if they don't want to. Some soldiers fast. And, you know, it's your personal strength. It's dependent on your ability.
Sports people as well, if you think about it. I mean,
again, there is an exemption given at certain times. If, for example, somebody's going to World Cup, but then what's his name, Mo Salah, he fasts throughout his career, doesn't break his fast, and he's an amazing sports person. So if somebody like him can do it, surely others are doing the same. If somebody is unable to fast, remember, if you're going to become physically unwell by fasting, God has given you exemption. Why push yourself beyond what you can cope? Simple.
Right, let's go to another call. Brian is in Cullercoats in the northeast. Hello, Brian.
Hi, Iain. I just want to say hello to your guest. Hello, Ajmal.
Hello.
I just wondered, I kind of sense that you could be Sunni Muslim. I'm not sure, because you mentioned Mecca. So is there a difference between Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims when it comes to Ramadan and Eid? Is it celebrated at the same time, or are there differences?
Good question.
Excellent question. Actually, no. And Muslims, wherever they are, certain fundamental principles of the faith, praying 5 times a day, praying in the direction of Mecca, fasting in the month of Ramadan, giving charity, these are universally accepted as the pillars of the faith, whether you're Shia or Sunni. Shia and the Sunni, the difference between the two is more political than religious, really. And that little difference we have, even in our religious interpretation, is based on interpretation rather than the text itself. So Muslims of Shia and Sunni background fast in the same way, break at the same time, and begin their fasting at the same time, and would do the Eid celebration in exactly the same way. It doesn't matter which sect you come from.
Tina in Ebervale in Wales says, hi Iain, Eid Mubarak, please could you ask your guest during Ramadan, why do I hear my neighbours banging a drum, not too loud, or am I imagining it?
It could be a cultural thing. In the past, the time for breaking fast and time to starting fast was announced by banging drums. Some people may be just replicating that. But in the modern time, you don't need that because there is an alarm clock. They've got your phone. Alarm clock goes off. It's a personal thing. You wake up.
A bit less romantic than hearing someone bang a drum, isn't it?
Well, you'll wake up your neighbours. You're not supposed to. If you're fasting, let them sleep. They're not fasting. Muslims should be conscious of that fact, There is a saying of the Prophet that don't harm your neighbour. A Muslim is not a true Muslim if he or she harms their neighbour with their tongue and their hand. So the noise level that you have. Today in our mosque, our noise level was slightly high. Somebody had called the council officer called me.
Really?
Yeah. And immediately
Too much celebration, how dare you?
And immediately I asked my volunteers, please put the volume down. Bring the microphone or the speaker right more to the centre rather than to the edges of our property so that our neighbours are not harmed. I don't blame our neighbours if we're disturbing them and they complain. I'm very happy to listen. If somebody is banging their drum in the middle of the night, I'll be annoyed. So I would say to the Muslims, don't do it. Use your alarm clocks. And I would say to the neighbours who are not Muslims, perhaps now you know why, so maybe you would be more sensitive to it.
I think someone's got their timing wrong here. They're saying, where's Ben Kentish? Well, he's in the newsroom at the moment, but he will be with you in 21 minutes. You've only got 21 minutes to wait, Adam.
Ramadan teaches you patience.
Obviously a keen fan there. Now, Marcus says, I've always wondered what the rules on using alcohol in medication and other aspects of the Muslim life. I know that drinking alcohol is forbidden.
Correct. Anything that intoxicates is forbidden, not just alcohol, drugs and stuff like that. However, in medication, you're not taking alcohol for intoxicating purposes. It is medicinal. And according to Islamic theology, medicinal use of alcohol, obviously clearly coming through your doctor's prescription, is absolutely fine, not a problem. Even using alcohol on your perfume as a carrier is also allowed. So medicinal use of alcohol or any other product, if it's done regulatorily and through your doctor's supervision, is fine.
This is from Elena, who says, I have relatives in Leicester who we visit very regularly, so I'm used to Ramadan Eid Vaisakhi. What's that?
That's more Sikh Hindu celebration,
okay.
Vaisakhi.
And Diwali.
Yes.
And the smell of delicious lamb. And then she gets to her point. Can you have sex during Ramadan?
Yes, in the evening, after you've broken your fast. God says in the Quran, now be together with your spouse, skin to skin, and do whatever you want, as long as it's mutually consented, as long as you're not fasting, after fasting hours, until you start your fast.
I mean, what if you're feeling a bit horny during the day?
You'll have to hold on to it, just like the fact that you'll have to hold on to your food. It is the basic training of self-restraint. The Arabic word, Sawm, is the Arabic word, which means fasting. Actually, it means self-restraint. You learn to delay gratification.
Yeah.
I can wait. I'll wait for my food. I'll wait for my drink. I'll wait for sex. I can wait. And the more we learn to control our gratification, instant gratification is the biggest cause of our biggest troubles around the world today. Delay it, control more of it, and be conscious of it and appreciate it when you get it. And then you become, actually, you have a fantastic response, or you have a fantastic outcome. Good food, good taste, good drinks, and perhaps an orgasmic sex too.
Anyway, moving on. Graham is a new caller in Liverpool. Hello, Graham.
Hello, Ian. I'd like to ask, I have a guide dog. Would I be able to visit a mosque, or would I have to leave the dog outside?
You are welcome to come to the mosque with a guide dog. We are very clear. Some Muslims who use guide dog to come to the mosque, they're welcome. They're given a space and they are treated very equally. So, yes, you are welcome.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we're getting through a lot of questions here, aren't we? Right, let's take some more texts. Ian, a Muslim colleague has... a Muslim colleague has respected Ramadan and today took off work to celebrate Eid. He looks tired but hasn't mentioned it. What do I say to acknowledge it and my respect for it? I don't want to say the wrong thing. That's from Claire in Cardiff.
Oh, very simple, Claire. It's a human thing. You can say, you look very tired. You must have done an amazing amount of work. Just like anyone who has done a marathon would come home and they would look tired. It's nothing uncommon. I say to my children, my wife, my friends, you've done a great job. 30 days of fasting, well done. You're looking tired. You deserve a break. Go and have a break. It's fine. It's not a problem. It's a human empathy that you're showing. Don't worry about it. The person won't get offended.
And, of course, the human body reacts in different ways because we're all different. We all have a different physiology, and some people will look absolutely knackered at the end of Ramadan, and others are sort of just full of the joys of spring.
Like me. I am
exactly.
I'm not looking...
I can't imagine you ever being depressed.
I try my best, and that I believe, and I don't want to brag about it, I believe that's because I have a very different outlook to life, and that is what is meant to happen will happen. I'm only responsible for doing my best.
You are the Doris Day of the Islamic faith. Whatever will be, will be.
Exactly. But I have got to do what is my part in it. Can't just sit there, pontificate and not do my part. So, yes, go ahead and tell your friends and your families or your colleagues that you're looking tired. You've done well done, happy Eid, and that's it. I would be very happy.
Emma says, thank you so much for this hour, really enjoying it and learning a lot. I too feel deeply that we should all live together and respect each other. I have a small understanding, but have never known where to gain the further understanding I would love surrounding Eid, so thank you. Also, always keep talking. By coming together, we defeat all naysayers. See, that's Emma in Ipswich. I think that is interesting because, as I say, part of the reason for doing this hour was to try and enable people to learn a little bit more. But what would you say to somebody like Emma who clearly wants to learn a little bit more about Islam? What should she do?
Pick up a book, read the Quran. All of those things are available nowadays online. You can download the Quran. There are fantastic translations I can recommend if you are looking for easy translation of the Quran. For example, Professor Abdul Halim's translation. He's a professor at SOAS of the Arabic department. He has translated the Quran in a very easy language to understand. If you like sophisticated understanding of the Quran, you can read other translations. I was just telling you, Iain, there is a fantastic book called Islam, the Destiny of Man. It's a brilliant book written by Professor Guy Eaton, a Cambridge professor, if you like heavy reading. If you like easy reading.
I don't like heavy reading.
Easy reading. There are many other books available. So I would recommend read. Often, if you speak to a Muslim, they may not be as well versed themselves. So it's better to go to the source. Quran is the first source. Then all the other books available in English, in any other language you like.
That's interesting that you say that not all Muslims are well versed in Islam, because it's the same in Christianity. If you said to, I'd say quite the overwhelming majority of Christians, tell me why Easter is celebrated when it is, and tell me the basics of Easter, I suspect that you would get a pretty dusty look from quite a few.
It's true, for the Muslims too.
Yeah.
And that's a human thing.
And yet I think the impression given is that Muslims are more devout than Christians.
Maybe devout based on their affinity with the faith, not based on knowledge. I was brought up in a Muslim family. My father, my mother, my whole society has done something in a particular way. I'm just following. Remember, human beings are followers mainly, not really the makers and the leaders. But what Islam requires, and this will probably come as a huge revelation to you, the first revelation to Prophet Muhammad was read, Iqra. The first word and the first command of God to Islam, to the Muslims, is read. And it is through reading that you liberate yourself. And when Muslims fail to read, I get very upset about it. I say to them, just read your faith. And I say the same to my non-Muslim friends. Read about Islam. You'll suddenly discover a whole new world out there and a new lifestyle and a lesson that you can draw from it too. You don't have to be a Muslim to enjoy Islam, by the way.
Well, on that controversial bombshell, we'll go to a break.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:49 on LBC. Can I just thank you for all of the lovely messages that are coming in? And they are predominantly lovely messages, I have to say. People say, well, I've really learnt a lot from this hour. Kevin says, excellent show tonight, Iain. Please say Eid Mubarak to your knowledgeable and very pleasant guest. And I hope that is translated correctly, as I have to use voice translation as I'm blind. It was absolutely translated correctly, Kevin. Ranjit in Oldbury, who normally phones us up, he's WhatsApped us tonight. He says the last few weeks have been very good on a religious note, with Easter, Eid, and this coming weekend, Vaisakhi, which is the birth of modern Sikhism. I hope you'll mention it. Well, we did get a brief mention earlier, Ranjit. He says, to be honest, not many people will know what Vaisakhi is. I have to say, I had never heard of it, which I'm slightly ashamed of.
It's okay. We're learning. You should get somebody from the Sikh community to come and explain, just like I am. Well, it could be an enriching experience for everybody.
Well, I mean, we have done this sort of thing. In fact, I remember a few years ago we did do an hour on Easter trying to explain what that means in the Christian faith, because we all know what Christmas is, but as I said before, I think there's still a lot of ignorance about Easter, and I think we did one on Diwali a few years ago too, so we may return to that another time. Mohammed says, thank you so much for doing this hour on Eid. And Ahmed says, Eid Mubarak to you, Iain. Thank you so much for bringing this wonderful subject up. And somebody else says, I have to say, Ajmal has done a great job of explaining his religion. Really enjoyed it. And Angela in Brittany in France says, really finding this hour interesting and fascinating. Being brought up as a Catholic during the 60s, I'm very naive when it comes to other religions. So Ajmal has really opened my eyes. Damash says, as a whole, we in the UK should understand each other's religion. Enjoying the show. Next time, do a show on the Hindu festival, Diwali, or the Sikh festival, Vaisakhi. Do you know when Vaisakhi is?
I can't exactly remember the date. That's my failure.
Well,
find out.
Chris can Google it for us, and we'll find out, and maybe we will do that. It's this weekend. Oh, well, we could do it tomorrow, I suppose. Well, who knows? We may well do that. Now, Richard in Hertford says, a few questions on Ramadan. He's only got two. The fast lasts during daylight in the UK. What time is considered daybreak and daylight?
Well, crack of dawn, early morning, basically, before sun rises. That's the starting point. And then as soon as sun sets. And both of those are very clearly scientifically calculated. And you know, for example, now it would start at 5 or the end of, so beginning of fast will start at 5 and we'll finish now because we've just entered summertime, about 7:45 or even 8 o'clock.
His second question, what is considered a compliant breakfast and also compliant dinner? I get the general gist that it should be modest, but what is normal and what is too much?
Well, there is a saying of the Prophet, whenever you eat, you should fill your stomach divide your stomach into 3 parts. Fill 1/3 with food, 1/3 liquid, and keep 1/3 empty for air. And this very principle of only filling your stomach 1/3 is what we should be observing throughout the year. In the month of Ramadan, we break our fast with a date, as I said, something light to eat. Usually in the Asian households, lots of fried food, samosas, pakoras, all sorts of goodies that people love. You would be pleased to know that this Ramadan, I've been such a good boy. I've not touched a single ounce of carb or sugar, deliberately.
Really?
Yeah, nothing.
How can you go for a month without having any carbs?
I'm talking about processed carb. So natural carbs, such as in carrots, in chickpea, or anything else that naturally is found in vegetables, etc., I do have. But no bread, no pasta, no rice, no wheat. So just...
Potatoes?
Nothing. Just cut them out for 1 month only for 30 days. And no sugar, no processed sugar. I have dates. Dates contains a lot of sugar. Natural sugar is okay with me. And I've lost 10 kilos. And I feel amazing. This is not the purpose of Ramadan, by the way, but you can detox your body and detox your mind by fasting and eating the right food at the right time. Fatty food, fried food are not that good. It really causes you problems. And if you cut them out, some would say, oh, come on, you're taking away the festivities of our fasting. Well, then have them, but have them in moderation.
You see, I've just realised I've been on a 3.5-month fast because I have bought no chocolate, no sweets since January the 1st. Now, I have eaten them. If somebody gives me sweets, I'll eat them. But I've cut the consumption by about 95%.
By making this announcement, you'll get hundreds of chocolate bars sent to you.
I obviously wouldn't encourage that. It would have to be diabetic. The trouble with diabetic chocolate is if you have more than 2 segments, it's, shall we say, has unfortunate consequences.
Don't have it then.
No.
I was very good until this morning when my ice cream van, the guy came up to me and he goes to me, you're the chief of this mosque, I'm going to give you an ice cream. And he gave me double cone and took a photograph of it. So he's flying around in my group. This Imam has said he's not eating sugar. Look at him holding double ice cream. As endorsed
by the local Imam. That
Absolutely.
Should increase his sales. Right, Cheryl is in Nottingham. Hello, Cheryl. Cheryl, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, love.
What would you like to say?
It's just to say I don't want to upset the Imam in any way because he seems to be like a very sincere and well-practicing Muslim. But I'd like to know what he thinks about Hamas, Hezbollah and ISIS, groups like that.
Well, that's brought the mood down a bit.
I would say let's stick to Ramadan and Eid because we've discussed it in the last hour in details. We as human beings are more similar than different. Whatever organization you come from, whatever political persuasion you have, ultimately you're a human being. And if you have forgotten your humanity, and if we forget our humanity and compassion, we could do anything to one another. And I would like us to all come back to humanity. And Ramadan teaches me to be a human, to exercise compassion, to connect with the unfortunate in the world, and most importantly, to be grateful for the amazing blessings I enjoy on a daily basis.
What do you say to Matt, who says, I don't care about Ramadan, this is England, not Muslim Pakistan?
No problem. You are welcome to have that view. I, as a Muslim, belong to this country. This is my home, and I care about Ramadan. 5 million people who are British, who live in this country, they do the same. In fact, 2 billion people of the world do. You don't have to agree with it. You do lots of things that I don't agree with, but we have to learn to live with one another, even with our differences.
Diana in Peterborough says, your guest Imam sounds absolutely delightful. What a fantastic advert for a human being and the Muslim faith. Thank you. Here is one it's a long one, from Gordon, who says, we used to have the same thing with shaking of hands in my... this goes back to my uncomfortableness with shaking hands in church. We used to have the same thing with the shaking of hands in my Church of Scotland services as a child. We had to say, may the peace of God be with you. Yeah, that's it. In Scotland, a peace is a sandwich, as it always used to have us in fits of giggles, shamefully. There's nothing... That passes for Scottish humour, I think, doesn't it? It was the same when we made up words to the hymns. I remember Teresa Greenhill Fire Away at Easter. Teresa Greenhill Fire... I don't know what that's supposed to signify, but I'm sure it was very funny in Scotland. But now I'm going to get lots of people saying, how dare you say that? Anyway, never mind.
There is a similarity, which is that we also say the same thing. We say, Assalamu alaikum, may peace of God be upon you. All religion have the same. Jewish communities say shalom to people. So the concept of peace and greeting one another with peace is fantastic.
And Olivia says, I do hope you're now going to have someone on like Gavin Ashenden to give the Christian perspective, please. Well, we're not tonight because we've only got 2 minutes left. And Gavin Ashenden, I think I heard him on Tom Swarbrick's programme. Was it yesterday or the day before? So he gets around a bit. We do all sorts of different religious topics on this programme, and I like to think we're fair to everybody. And as I said, we may well look at doing something on Vaisakhi, the Sikh festival, tomorrow night on the programme. And we've done lots of Christian-related phone-ins as well. Just a quick one from Oliver, who's in South Harrow. Oliver, hi.
Good evening. I'm going to be very quick because I used to be Muslim myself. And there's a point I never got in Islam. Why are Muslims not allowed to eat pork? Because I eat pork, and I've never... No Muslim has ever explained to me why it's...
30 seconds coming up.
Oh, wow, God. Our submission to God means that we also sacrifice few things. God says don't eat pork. Because we have accepted God's words, we don't eat pork.
Ajmal, you've been a brilliant guest for 2 hours on the programme. Not many people ever get to do that, but we're very grateful because I know I've delayed your big meal tonight.